The stars looked different from the observation deck of Outpost Epsilon 9. Commander Zaxtral had served on many stations throughout his 30 cycles with the Arthesian Defense Force, but none felt as lonely as this one. The outpost hung at the very edge of known space, facing the vast emptiness called the Void. No one went into the Void. No one returned from it. Zaxtral's scaled fingers tapped against the railing as he stared into the swirling purple nebula that marked the border. His duty shift had ended 2 hours ago, but sleep would not come. The dreams had returned. Dreams of strange, two-armed beings with soft skin and determined eyes. Commander. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Cree, her scales shifting from standard blue to an anxious green. Long-range sensors are picking up unusual activity at the edge of the Void. Zaxtral turned, his tail stiffening. Define unusual. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. They appeared suddenly, as if they were always there but hidden. Zaxtral followed Cree to the command center, where the monitoring screens showed a pattern of lights where only darkness had existed before. Not one signature, but hundreds, perhaps thousands. Send a message to Central Command, Zaxtral ordered, his throat sac expanding with tension. Priority 1. Cree hesitated. Sir, communications are not working. Something is blocking our signals. For the first time in his career, Zaxtral felt true fear crawl up his spine. 6 light-years away, on the colony world of Proxima Centauri 4, Alan Perry wiped sweat from his forehead as he finished his shift at the hydroponic farm. The artificial sunlight dimmed, signaling evening cycle. Around him, rows of green plants grew in carefully controlled conditions, providing food for the 40,000 humans who called New Providence home. Alan had been born here, as had his parents before him. He had never seen Earth except in pictures and videos. Sometimes that fact made him sad. Other times, like today, it filled him with pride. His people had survived. They had grown strong in secret. He collected his tools and walked through the farm's airlock, nodding to Ben Garcia, who was starting the night shift. Big day tomorrow, Ben said with a meaningful look. Alan nodded. Everyone knew what was coming. After tomorrow, everything would change. The streets of New Providence were busy as Alan made his way home. The colony had been built to resemble old Earth towns with tree-lined streets and houses with front yards. It was a comfort to the first generation of colonists, his grandparents' people, who had left Earth before the Silence Protocol. Children played in the community park, throwing balls and climbing on playground equipment. Overhead, the protective dome shimmered slightly, keeping the poisonous elements of Proxima's atmosphere out while letting starlight in. Most evenings, Alan barely noticed the dome anymore. Tonight he stared at it, wondering how it would feel when it was no longer needed, when they no longer needed to hide. His house sat on Maple Street, a small blue building with white trim. As he approached, he saw his wife Diane sitting on the front steps, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes watching the artificial sky. "You're late," she said, but she was smiling. Alan sat beside her, taking her hand. "Had to finish preparing the new seedlings. After tomorrow we might be very busy for a while." Diane squeezed his hand. "Did you hear? The council voted. The silence ends tomorrow. After 100 years, we're finally going to announce ourselves. I heard rumors. So it's official?" Diane nodded. "Carol from Communications confirmed it. At 0800 tomorrow, all colonies will drop their cloaking fields simultaneously. All ships will reveal themselves. We're going to shock the galaxy." Alan looked up at the dome, imagining the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations went about their business, completely unaware that humans had been living among them all this time. The Galactic Confederation had tried to contain humanity to Sol System a century ago, fearing their rapid development and unpredictable nature. Instead of fighting, humanity had simply vanished, using experimental technology to hide entire planets and fleets. "Do you think they even remember we exist?" Alan asked. "The older ones might. As a warning story, they tell their children. Don't be like the humans. Dangerous, unpredictable." Diane smiled slightly. They have no idea what we've become. Their conversation was interrupted by the evening announcement system. A calm voice spoke throughout the colony. Citizens of New Providence, tonight we share in a historic moment. For 100 years, humanity has hidden in the shadows, building our strength, developing our technology, and preparing for this day. Tomorrow at Ordo 800, New Providence will join all human colonies and fleets in revealing ourselves to the galaxy. Please remain calm and follow all safety protocols. This is not an act of war, but a declaration of our right to exist freely among the stars. Stand proud, citizens. Tomorrow we reclaim our place in the galaxy. After the announcement ended, Alan and Diane sat in silence for a moment. I should check our emergency supplies, Diane said eventually. As colony safety coordinator, she had helped prepare for every possible reaction from the Confederation. They won't attack, Alan said, though he couldn't be sure. No one could. They'll be too shocked. I hope you're right. Later that night, Alan stood at their bedroom window looking at the night sky. The colonial government had arranged for the dome to display the actual star positions tonight without the usual disguising projections. He could see the bright red light of Proxima Centauri, and beyond it, the tiny speck that was Sol, the original home of humanity, now heavily defended and hidden behind the most powerful cloaking technology ever created. Sleep would not come easily tonight. In his mind, Alan pictured the faces of aliens when they realized that humans had been living right beside them all along. When they discovered that the uninhabitable planets they had been studying were actually thriving human colonies. When they learned that some of their own trading partners and diplomatic contacts had been humans in disguise. There would be fear. There would be anger. But in the end, there would be respect. Because humanity had not spent a century hiding out of fear. They had been preparing, growing stronger, developing technologies the Confederation couldn't imagine. Tomorrow, the legends would become real, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council was filled with nervous energy. Representatives from 200 alien species sat in the grand circular chamber, their voices creating a steady hum of worried conversation. News had spread quickly about strange energy readings appearing simultaneously across Confederate space. High Counselor Vex Mora glided to the central platform, her 6 tentacles moving gracefully as she took her position. The chamber quieted as she raised her primary appendages, the traditional sign for attention. Esteemed members of the Confederation, she began, her voice translator conveying her words in the standard galactic language. We face an unprecedented situation. At Aero 800 Standard Time today, our sensors detected thousands of unknown energy signatures across our territory. These signatures appeared without warning, as if they had been there all along but hidden from our view. Senator Greel, a bulky reptilian from the Darkened systems, rose from his seat. What are they? A new form of natural space phenomena? They are not natural, Vex Mora replied, her skin shifting to a darker blue. They bear the markings of artificial technology. Many appear to be vessels, large vessels, and others. She paused, seeming reluctant to continue. Others appear to be planets or moons that suddenly changed. The chamber erupted into alarmed chatter. Changed planets? It was impossible. This is absurd, Senator Greel shouted over the noise. Planets do not simply change. As if in response to his outburst, every communication device in the chamber activated simultaneously. The large central view screen that normally showed the Confederate emblem flickered and changed to show the image of a human woman with auburn hair and determined green eyes. She wore a uniform with unfamiliar insignia. Attention, Galactic Confederation, Council, she said, her voice calm and authoritative. I am Admiral Susan Wright of the Earth Alliance Navy. For 100 years we have watched from the shadows as you expanded your influence across the galaxy. We have observed your treatment of developing species, your resource wars, and your political machinations. We chose isolation to build our strength while you forgot our existence. That isolation ends today. The council chamber fell into stunned silence. Humans. The legendary lost species that had vanished a century ago when the Confederation attempted to quarantine them. That's not possible, Senator Greel whispered, his scales paling. They were contained, they disappeared. Admiral Wright continued, her image now showing on every screen across Confederate space. What you are detecting are human colonies and fleets that have existed alongside you for decades, hidden by our cloaking technology. We are not announcing our presence as a prelude to conflict. We seek peaceful coexistence, but we will no longer hide. We will no longer be denied our place among the stars. The transmission ended, leaving the council in chaos. On the colony world of Tau Ceti Prime, Governor Frank Collins watched the sun rise over the capital city from his office window. Today, the sunrise looked different. For the first time in 50 years, it wasn't filtered through the planetary cloaking field. The city gleamed in the natural light, its white buildings and green parks now visible to anyone watching from space. "Governor, we're receiving transmissions from Confederate ships entering orbit," said Olivia Grant, his security chief. "They're requesting permission to send down representatives." Collins nodded. They had expected this. "Grant permission for a small delegation only. Standard security protocols." "Yes, sir," Olivia replied, her hand resting casually on her sidearm. Like most human security personnel, she hoped for peace, but prepared for conflict. "Our sensors show they have weapons," systems powered down. They appeared to be in shock more than anything. Collins smiled slightly. "I imagine they are." Finding out that what they thought was an uninhabitable rocky planet is actually home to 5 million humans would be quite a surprise. Outside his window, the city continued its normal activities. Children went to school. Workers went to their jobs. The reveal had been carefully planned to cause minimal disruption to daily life. They wanted to show the Confederation that humans were not the primitive, chaotic species they had judged them to be a century ago. The communication panel on Collins' desk chimed. "Governor, Admiral Wright is on Secure Channel 1. Collins accepted. The call in the Admiral's face appeared on his screen. "Governor Collins, status report?" "All proceeding as planned, Admiral. The cloaking field dropped on schedule. Confederate forces have responded with curiosity rather than hostility. They're sending down a diplomatic team." "Excellent." Wright nodded. "Similar reports are coming in from other colonies. The Confederation appears too stunned to consider military action, which gives us the time we need for diplomacy." "And if diplomacy fails?" Collins asked the question that had been on many minds. Wright's expression remained calm. "Then we demonstrate why attempting to contain humanity was their first mistake, and why attacking us would be their last. But I don't believe it will come to that. Our intelligence suggests the Confederation needs allies. They face threats they cannot handle alone." The call ended and Collins turned back to the window. In the distance, he could see a small Confederate shuttle descending through the atmosphere, escorted by 2 human interceptors. First contact. Again. Aboard the Arthesian, battlecruiser Indomitable, Captain Drez stared at the view screen in disbelief. Where there had been empty space hours ago, now hung a massive space station surrounded by hundreds of human vessels, ships of all sizes, from nimble fighters to enormous dreadnoughts that dwarfed his own vessel. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, voice trembling, "the human vessels are reading power signatures far beyond our own. Their weapon systems are inactive, but, sir, if they powered up, they could destroy us in seconds." Drez sank into his command chair, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. "Open a channel to the human station." The view screen changed to show a human, male with gray hair and calm blue eyes. "This is Fleet Admiral Nathan Howard of the Earth Alliance Station Valiant. Welcome, Captain Drez." Drez tried to hide his surprise at hearing his name. "You know who I am?" Howard smiled slightly. "We've been monitoring Confederate communications for decades. We know a great deal about you, more than you might be comfortable with." "Why reveal yourselves now after all this time?" Drez asked. "Because the galaxy is changing," Howard replied. "There are threats emerging beyond your borders, threats the Confederation is not equipped to face alone. Humanity has spent a century preparing, not just for our own survival, but for what we knew would eventually come. And what is that? Drez felt a chill run down his spine. Howard's expression grew serious. In approximately 6 months, the Krell, Dominion will launch an invasion through the wormhole at the edge of your territory. They've conquered 12 galaxies before this one. Without our help, the Confederation will fall within weeks. The revelation hung in the air between them, a truth more shocking than even the sudden appearance of an entire hidden civilization. How could you possibly know this? Drez whispered. Because we've been to the other side of the wormhole, Howard answered. The void, as you call it, was never empty. It was simply where we traveled freely beyond your detection. We've seen what's coming, Captain, and now we must decide together how to face it. The Confederate Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from all member species packed the room, with more watching through video feeds. At the center of attention stood a human man in a formal, dark blue uniform. Ambassador. Gregory Winters had served for 15 years as the Phylaxian trade envoy. The Phylaxians were known for wearing full-body environmental suits due to their sensitive physiology. No one had ever seen a Phylaxian's true form, because they didn't exist. Winters had removed his helmet minutes ago, revealing his human features to the stunned assembly. His revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Humans had been hiding, in plain sight, gathering intelligence while pretending to be another species entirely. For decades we have walked among you, Winters said, his voice now free from the artificial modulator he had used for years. We have traded with you, learned from you, and yes, studied you. All while you believed our kind was lost or extinct. High Counselor Veximora's tentacles curled with emotion. This deception goes beyond all acceptable diplomatic practices. You infiltrated our highest levels of government. Winters remained calm. We did what was necessary after your predecessors attempted to contain us to our home system. You declared humanity too dangerous, too unpredictable to join galactic society. Rather than fight a war we couldn't win at that time, we chose another path. We disappeared. We developed technology that allowed us to hide entire planets, fleets, and individuals. Impossible, muttered Senator Greel, though his tone lacked conviction after all that had been revealed. 3 days ago, humanity revealed over 120 colonies and outposts within what you consider Confederate space, Winters continued. Many on planets you believed uninhabitable. Some on moons you've studied for decades without realizing they were populated. The Tellarite ambassador leaned forward. How many of you are there? The Earth Alliance currently numbers just over 12 billion humans spread across our territory, Winters answered, with a fleet of over 20,000 vessels. The number sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. The entire Confederate fleet numbered less than 10,000 ships. What do you want? Vexmora asked, her voice cautious. The Earth Alliance does not come seeking war, Winters replied. We come offering a choice, partnership or neutrality. For a century, we have watched your Confederation struggle with internal conflicts, resource shortages, and the threat of the Krell Dominion beyond your borders. We can help with all of these problems, if you're willing to accept that humanity is not the primitive species you once thought us to be. On the frontier world of Arcadia, Catherine Blake walked slowly through Capital City's Central Park, with a delegation of Confederate diplomats. The alien visitors stared in wonder at the perfect blend of nature and technology. Floating gardens hung suspended between crystal towers. Clean energy systems powered everything without pollution. Your people built all this while hiding from the galaxy? Asked the Tellarite ambassador, his small eyes wide with amazement. Not hiding, Catherine corrected with a gentle smile. Preparing. She led them toward the Central Administration Building, a beautiful structure of glass and living plant material. As they walked, human children played nearby, some using personal anti-gravity devices to float and play three-dimensional games in the air. Those devices, the Merizian delegate pointed, our scientists have been trying to develop personal anti-gravity for decades without success. We'd be happy to share the technology, Catherine said. That's part of why we've revealed ourselves now. Humanity has developed many technologies that could benefit all species. Inside the administration building, they entered a large, circular room where a holographic display showed the Milky Way galaxy. Red markers pulsed along the outer rim. This is why we needed to reveal ourselves now, Catherine explained. The Krell Dominion has conquered 12 galaxies. They move from one to the next, stripping planets of resources and enslaving populations. Their scouts have already passed through the wormhole near Outpost Epsilon 9. The Void, whispered one of the delegates. Catherine nodded. What you call the Void is actually a region of space where human ships have operated freely, beyond your detection. We've been monitoring the Krell for years. Their invasion fleet will arrive in less than 6 months. The delegates looked at each other with growing horror. The Confederation is not prepared for such a threat, the Tellarite admitted. Alone, neither are we, Catherine said. But together, we might stand a chance. In deep space near the wormhole that connected to Krell territory, Commander Peter Lewis stood on the bridge of the EAS Guardian. His ship was one of 50 human vessels forming a perimeter around the spatial anomaly. New sensor data was coming in hourly as their probes on the other side reported Krell fleet movements. They're gathering faster than we predicted, said his science officer Lisa Martinez. She adjusted her display to show the latest information. At current pace, they'll be ready to move in 4 months, not 6. Lewis frowned. Forward this to Admiral Howard immediately. The timeline for the alliance negotiations may need to be accelerated. He moved to the forward view screen, watching as a Confederate patrol ship approached cautiously. It was the third such vessel to visit the wormhole perimeter since humanity's reveal. This one carried scientific personnel requesting to observe human monitoring techniques. Commander, his communications officer called, the Confederate vessel is requesting permission to dock and transfer their science team. Permission granted, Lewis replied. Prepare the briefing room and living quarters for our guests. He turned to his first officer, John Wells. What do you think? Can we trust them? Wells considered for a moment. Trust has to start somewhere, but I'd limit their access to non-critical systems for now. Lewis nodded in agreement. A century of secrecy wasn't easy to set aside. The Confederation had once deemed humanity too dangerous to join their society. Now humanity held technologies and military power that could save that same society from destruction. Commander, Martinez called suddenly, her voice tense. The probes are detecting unusual activity on the other side of the wormhole. Energy. Readings are spiking. Lewis moved quickly to her station. Krell ships? Yes, sir. But they're not just gathering anymore. Martinez looked up, her expression grave. They're moving. Toward the wormhole. Battle stations, Lewis ordered, his voice calm despite the surge of adrenaline. Alert all ships in the perimeter. Send emergency transmission to Earth Command and the Confederate Council. Klaxons sounded throughout the ship as crew members rushed to their positions. On the view screen, the peaceful starfield seemed unchanged, but Lewis knew that would soon change. The Krell were coming early. The carefully planned alliance between humanity and the Confederation was still in its fragile early stages. Trust had barely begun to form. Sir, Wells said quietly beside him, if the Krell come through now. Lewis nodded grimly. Then humanity will reveal itself in the one way we hope to avoid. Through war, around the EAS Guardian, the other human ships moved into defensive formation. Their superior technology had remained mostly hidden even after the reveal. The Confederation had seen their ships, but not their true capabilities. The Confederate science vessel, caught in the middle of a rapidly developing crisis, moved closer to the Guardian. They're hailing us, sir, the communications officer reported. On screen, Lewis ordered. The face of the Confederate captain appeared, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. Commander Lewis, we have received your alert. Our vessel is not equipped for combat, but we offer any assistance we can provide. Lewis made a quick decision. Captain, dock with us immediately. Your scientists may have valuable insights, and we can better protect your vessel if it's secured to ours. As the science vessel moved to dock, Lewis turned back to the wormhole. In the distance, the spatial anomaly began to shimmer with unnatural light. And so it begins, he murmured. The wormhole erupted with brilliant blue energy as the first Krell ships pushed through. Their vessels were unlike anything the Confederation had ever seen. Massive, organic-looking structures with jagged spines and pulsing red lights. 10 ships emerged, then 20, then 50. On the bridge of the EAS Guardian, Commander Peter Lewis watched the enemy approach. The Confederate science vessel had successfully docked minutes earlier, and their lead scientist, Dr. Zahn, now stood beside him. "Those are merely scout vessels," Dr. Zahn said, his 4 eyes widening. "Their main warships are much larger." Lewis nodded grimly. "I know. We've encountered them before." He turned to his communications officer. "Status of the evacuation?" "All civilian ships have cleared the sector, Commander. Confederate outposts are evacuating now." Lewis took a deep breath. The moment humanity had prepared for over decades had arrived sooner than expected. The Krell scouts were advancing in standard attack formation, unaware they faced anything more than the usual Confederate border patrol. "All ships, this is Commander Lewis. Execute Protocol Omega. Weapons free." Around the Guardian, the other human vessels began to change. Sections of hull plating shifted, revealing advanced weapon systems that had remained hidden even after the initial reveal of humanity's presence. Energy readings spiked as power diverted to systems the Confederation didn't know existed. Dr. Zahn gasped, "What's happening to your ships?" "We kept some capabilities in reserve," Lewis explained. "Even after revealing ourselves to the Confederation, we maintained certain precautions." The human fleet moved forward with stunning precision. Lewis watched as the first volley of quantum torpedoes launched toward the leading Krell vessels. The weapons moved faster than any conventional torpedo, leaving trails of blue energy as they crossed the void. When they struck the Krell ships, the effects were devastating. Energy cascaded across the alien hulls, disrupting their organic mechanical systems. 3 ships exploded immediately. 2 more drifted powerless. The remaining Krell vessels returned fire, their weapons lashing out with red energy beams. Blow. Guardian shook as one beam struck its forward shields. "Shields holding at 92%, reported the tactical officer. "Return fire all forward batteries," Lewis ordered. The Guardian's main cannons fired, sending pulses of bright energy toward the Krell formation. More enemy vessels erupted into flame and debris. Dr. Zahn clung to a nearby console, watching in astonishment. "Your weapons, your shields, they're far beyond anything the Confederation possesses." "A century of isolation gave us time to develop," Lewis said as he studied the tactical display. "But even with our technology, the full Krell invasion, force will overwhelm us if we face them alone." On the screen, the remaining Krell scouts began to retreat toward the wormhole. They had clearly not expected such resistance. "They'll be back," Lewis said, "and in much greater numbers." In the Confederate Council chamber, chaos reigned. Emergency reports flooded in from the border sector. Images of the battle showed human ships destroying Krell scouts with shocking ease. High Counselor Vexmora raised her tentacles for silence. "The Krell have begun their invasion earlier than the humans predicted, but the human fleet has repelled the first wave. With weapons they kept hidden from us," Senator Greel pointed out. "Even after their so-called reveal." Ambassador Gregory Winters stepped forward. "We revealed our existence, we offered alliance, but after a century of distrust, would you have immediately shared your most advanced military technology? Especially when that technology is all that stands between this galaxy and the Krell Dominion." The chamber fell silent at his words. "The Krell scouts have retreated," Winters continued. "But their main invasion fleet will follow soon. The Earth Alliance formally requests an immediate military alliance with the Galactic Confederation." Vexmora's skin rippled with colors as she considered the request. "You ask for trust when you have admitted to decades of deception. We ask for survival," Winters corrected. "Yours and ours." A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, Admiral Susan Wright from her flagship. "Counselors," she addressed them, "we have little time. Our long-range sensors indicate the main Krell fleet is mobilizing. Within 7 days they will come through the wormhole with thousands of warships. Not even humanity can stand against such numbers alone. She touched a control, and the hologram changed to show technical schematics. These are designs for upgrades to your current shield technology. Consider it a gesture of good faith. My engineers can begin helping your fleet implement these improvements immediately. Vex Mora looked at her fellow counselors. One by one, they nodded. We accept your offered alliance, she told Admiral Wright. And your assistance. On the colony world of New Terra, Samantha Wells directed the massive planetary defense preparations. The formerly hidden human world stood directly in the expected path of the Krell advance. Rather than evacuate, they had chosen to fortify. The shield generators are at maximum output, her assistant reported. All civilians have been moved to the underground shelters. Samantha nodded, studying the holographic map of the surrounding space. New Terra had once been thought an uninhabitable rock in the Epsilon Eridani system. Now it revealed its true nature. A heavily fortified human stronghold with defenses built into the planet itself. A fleet of Confederate ships appeared in orbit, joining the human vessels already stationed there. It was an unusual sight, the distinctive organic curves of Confederate designs alongside the more angular human ships. The Confederate commander is requesting permission to coordinate defense plans, her communications officer said. Grant it, Samantha replied. Show them to the Central Command Center. Within an hour, the command center filled with a mix of human and alien officers. Decades of separation melted away as they worked together on defensive strategies. The Krell were a common enemy, a threat to all sentient life in the galaxy. If we position your cruisers here, a human tactical officer suggested to his Confederate counterpart, and our battleships here, we create a crossfire zone. The Confederate officer, a tall insectoid being, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Yes, and if we add our missile platforms at these coordinates, we can create a three-dimensional killing field. Samantha watched the cooperation with careful optimism. Alliance born of necessity was fragile, but it was a beginning. A young communications officer rushed into the room. Governor Wells, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the wormhole. Defense fleet, the Krell main force has begun to move. They'll reach the wormhole within 24 hours. The room fell silent. Their estimates had given them days, not hours. Inform all ships to move to battle positions, Samantha ordered, her voice steady despite the news. And send word to Earth Command. Tell them. She glanced at the Confederate officers around her. Tell them we stand together. As the messenger hurried away, Samantha turned to the tactical display. The massive Krell fleet appeared as a red cloud moving inexorably toward the wormhole. Will we hold? Asked the Confederate commander quietly. Samantha met his alien eyes. We must. There's nowhere left to hide for any of us. Outside in orbit around New Terra, human and Confederate ships moved into defensive formation. Ancient enemies now allies, preparing to face an even greater threat. The legend of humanity was about to write its most important chapter. The stars themselves seemed to bend as the wormhole expanded, straining under the pressure of too many ships pushing through at once. The Krell invasion fleet poured into Confederate space, 3,000 warships strong, a force that had conquered a dozen galaxies before. From the bridge of the EAS Defiant, Supreme Commander Jack Nelson coordinated the combined human and Confederate defense. His ship hung at the center of the Allied fleet, surrounded by 500 vessels from both civilizations. Krell fleet has fully emerged from the wormhole, reported his sensor officer, her voice steady despite the overwhelming numbers they faced. Nelson nodded grimly. The enemy outnumbered them 6-1, but numbers weren't everything. All ships execute Pattern Delta, Nelson ordered, his voice broadcasting to every vessel in the Allied fleet. Spring the trap. The human ships, with their superior speed and stealth technology, broke formation. They darted forward in small groups, appearing to make reckless attacks against the massive Krell formation. The Krell commanders, believing they faced desperate suicide runs, directed their forward ships to engage. Just as planned, the Krell vessels followed the human ships, breaking their tight formation as they gave chase. As they did, gaps appeared in their lines. Now, Nelson commanded. Hidden throughout the nearby asteroid field, Confederate heavy cruisers powered up their engines and weapons. They had been waiting in ambush, their signatures masked by special devices provided by human engineers. Now, they emerged, firing directly into the gaps in the Krell formation. Explosions blossomed across space as dozens of Krell ships were caught in the devastating crossfire. The remaining Krell vessels attempted to regroup, but the damage was done. Their perfect formation was shattered. "Fighter squadrons, you are clear to launch," Nelson ordered. From the hangar bays of the largest human vessels, hundreds of small fighters streamed out into space. Leading them was Major Heather Morrison, the best pilot in the Earth Alliance. "All fighters, form up on me," she commanded over the squadron channel. "Remember your training. Their tracking systems can't lock onto our new stealth hulls. Use that advantage." The human fighters moved like schools of fish, flowing between the massive Krell ships in patterns impossible to predict. They fired precisely at vulnerable points that human intelligence had identified during years of secret observation. Krell ships began to explode from seemingly minor damage as the fighters targeted critical systems. The Confederate cruisers pressed their advantage, their weapons now enhanced with human technology. But the Krell hadn't conquered 12 galaxies by being easy to defeat. The center of their formation opened, revealing their flagship, a monstrous vessel twice the size of any other. It pulsed with angry red energy before firing a massive beam directly at the E's Defiant. "Brace for impact," Nelson shouted as the beam struck. The ship shuddered violently. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. "Quantum shields down to 37%, reported the tactical officer. "One more hit like that and we're finished." Nelson studied the tactical display, searching for a solution. The battle had become a chaotic mess of individual ship engagements. The initial advantage of surprise was fading as the superior numbers of the Krell began to tell. "Sir," his communications officer called, "we're receiving a transmission from New Earth." Nelson looked up in surprise. New Earth was the hidden human colony in the Procyon system, disguised for decades as a gas giant. What could they be planning? The face of Governor William Mason appeared on screen. "Commander Nelson, the space elevator terminals are ready. We need you to draw the Krell flagship to coordinates 227 Mark 35. Nelson understood immediately. Acknowledged. All ships new objective. Aboard her fighter, Heather Morrison received the new orders and immediately changed course. "Squadron, follow me. We need to get the big one's attention." Her squadron swooped toward the Krell flagship, firing repeatedly at its sensor arrays. The massive ship turned ponderously to track them. "That's it," Heather muttered. "Follow the annoying little humans." More fighters joined the attack, darting in to fire quick bursts before retreating. The Krell flagship, enraged by these stinging attacks, moved away from its protective screen of vessels. Step by step, the human fighters lured the massive ship toward the coordinates specified by New Earth. On New Earth, the floating cloud cities that housed 50 million humans had been evacuated days earlier. Now the massive space elevator terminals that connected the surface to orbit had been converted into weapons platforms. Governor Mason watched the tactical display as the Krell flagship approached the perfect position. "Activate gravitational beams," he ordered. The terminals, there were 7 of them spaced equally around the planet, powered up simultaneously. They had been built as transport systems, using controlled gravity fields to move materials from the planet's surface to orbit. Now, with their power levels increased beyond safe limits, they became something else entirely. 7 beams of concentrated gravitational energy shot out from New Earth, converging on the position where the Krell flagship now hung in space. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The ship was caught in gravitational forces so intense they began to tear it apart at the molecular level. Metal screamed as it was pulled in 7 different directions simultaneously. "Maintain beam integrity," Mason ordered as warning lights flashed across control panels. Even if the systems burn out, the terminals were never designed for this level of output. Already they were overheating, their structural integrity failing, but they held long enough. With a final, silent explosion, the Krell flagship disintegrated. The gravitational beams had torn it apart completely, leaving nothing but scattered atoms where the mighty vessel had been. The terminals went dark, their systems burned beyond repair. But they had done their job. Throughout the battle zone, the destruction of their flagship sent shockwaves through the Krell fleet. Their coordinated attack faltered as command systems failed. Supreme Commander Nelson saw the opportunity immediately. All ships, press the attack. Don't give them time to regroup. Human and Confederate vessels surged forward together, their weapons tearing into the confused Krell ships. Fighter squadrons darted between larger vessels, causing chaos and destruction. After 3 hours of intense fighting, the remnants of the Krell fleet retreated through the wormhole, their commanders sending a single message back to their empire. Beware the humans. 2 weeks later, representatives from all Confederate worlds joined humanity's leaders aboard the massive space station Unity. The station had been constructed in secret at the precise location where, 100 years earlier, the Confederation had attempted to contain humanity to their home system. President William Mason addressed the historic gathering, his voice solemn but hopeful. A century ago, the Confederation saw humanity as a threat to be controlled. Today, we have proven ourselves to be something else entirely. Not conquerors, but protectors. He looked around at the assembled delegates, beings of every shape and form from hundreds of worlds. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. The Krell will return and in greater numbers. We have won a battle, but the war is just beginning. Neither of us can face this threat alone. Mason gestured to a group of human scientists who stepped forward, carrying data crystals. These contain the accumulated knowledge of humanity's century of isolation, scientific breakthroughs, medical advances, energy technologies, gifts to mark a new beginning between our peoples. High Counselor Vex Mora accepted the crystals with her tentacles. The Confederation acknowledges its error in judging humanity. Where we once saw threat, we now see our greatest ally. Around the station, human and Confederate ships patrolled together, former enemies now united in common purpose. The legends had always warned, beware the humans, for they are unlike any species we have encountered. What those legends failed to mention was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their cunning. It was their capacity to transform from the galaxy's greatest threat into its most dedicated guardians. From a species of legend to the architects of a new galactic order, humanity had returned to the stars.